What's going on, guys? Today we are going to be breaking down every single fight from Josh Emmett versus Kevin Vallejos, the UFC Fight Night at the Apex, giving you guys all of my best bets and predicting every single fight. And so let's get into it with the prelim opener of. I'm about to sneeze and I'm not restarting my intro. I'm sorry, with the prelim opener of Pierre Rodriguez versus Sam Hughes. And let's just say this is going to be a good one in the women's strawweight division. Pierre Rodriguez is a very, very talented fighter out of Venezuela. Sam Hughes, great cardio and wrestling out of the United States. Sam Hughes is a UFC veteran at this point in her tenure. And this is going to be an incredibly close, competitive fight throughout. But I think Pierre Rodriguez is going to win round one. I think Sam Hughes would be winning round three. Sam Hughes has great cardio, has great takedowns. I think potentially we could see Sam Hughes get a finish late in the fight, like a round three submission, a round three TKO on ground and pound with Pierre Rodriguez gassing out. And I think ultimately, because I can see Pierre Rodriguez gassing out, I think it could come down to, if it's a decision, I think we're going to see a split decision. I'm going to be honest here. Sam Hughes is a very, very, very talented fighter, but Pierre Rodriguez is a very, very talented fighter, but she gasses out. Sam Hughes is going to be more steady with that cardio, improving, getting better as the fight goes on. And so, give me Sam Hughes in a split decision or a late round finish, starting the card off with an underdog in women's strawweight. I always think when I'm predicting women's fights, there are two things that really matter: cardio and toughness, like a will to get it done. And I think Sam Hughes has those two advantages over Pierre Rodriguez. I think Pierre Rodriguez has a slight skill advantage, but we're going to see that gap really close after round one. So give me Sam Hughes. Moving onward, we got Elijah Smith versus Sung Young Yu. And so Sung Young Yu is undefeated in his UFC tenure. So is Elijah Smith. We've seen Elijah Smith look great with that absolutely nasty KO in his last bout. But Su Young Yu has looked very talented. I believe he's 3-0 in the UFC, maybe 2-0. He had a win on the Contender Series here. I want to double check all the statistics that I'm giving you guys to make sure that I'm, speaking accurately. I'm also going to be checking odds on this fight because I don't know the odds of every fight. I try my best not to look at the odds before making my predictions because I know potentially that could impact the way that I predict these bouts. But Elijah Smith with that that nasty knockout. I vividly remember that one. But Su Young Yu, let's double check that one. 3 wins in the UFC, all 3 coming by unanimous decision. And so Su Young Yu, his striking defense has looked really good. I believe it's something like 54, 56%. But he has not fought fighters that are all that talented, in my opinion. Su Young Yu, I believe his name is like a jiu-jitsu. Yeah, Von Jiu-Jitsu. He fights out of a jiu-jitsu team. Su Young Jiu-Jitsu is something. His nickname is very much so along those lines. You can tell this guy wants to grapple. He wants to take it to the ground. But Elijah Smith, I believe, it's pretty clear what's going to happen here. If Elijah Smith can keep it standing, Elijah Smith is going to absolutely sleep him. He's going to sleep him. But if Su Young Yu can get it to the ground, I think he's going to, be a very, very, very tough out here. I think Su Young Yu is going to dive for the legs. Elijah Smith is going to put in a few sprawls, get double underhooks a few times, be able to move out of it. And so I think Elijah Smith is going to come out on top against Su Young Yu. Potentially a unanimous decision. I think it's going to be a unanimous decision here. Su Young Yu has been difficult to finish thus far in his career. Only one loss coming by way of knockout. I think a lot of people are going to be, taking that knockout opportunity because Elijah Smith just coming off that huge KO. But I think Elijah Smith is going to put in a great performance and ultimately win this fight 29-28 on one judge's scorecard and maybe 30-27 on another. And so, moving onward, I'm just trying to pull up the odds as I speak on all of these fights. Bia Mesquita versus Montserrat Rendon. Rendon is an absolutely amazing, amazing fighter out of Mexico. Never been finished in her career, but Bia Mesquita is an absolute dog. The IBJJF world champion, Bia Mesquita, is an absolute killer on the ground. I believed in her last fight that she was potentially going to get that KO. She had that girl mounted. She was wailing big punches, absolutely dominating her on the ground. Eventually got the submission. We've seen Bia Mesquita win most of her fights by rear naked choke as a professional women's MMA fighter. However, we know Bia Mesquita has a lot left in the tank. A lot of submission opportunities for her. A very, very talented women's MMA fighter. And so, I'm just double checking here. Bia Mesquita is a minus 650 for a reason, right? Bia Mesquita is going to absolutely dominate this fight. And honestly, her to win by KO is something like plus 550. I think potentially she could get mount on Montserrat Rendon and just start wailing elbows. Boom, big punch. Boom, big punch. And Bia Mesquita will absolutely dominate this fight. I really could see her getting it done by any method here, but she's a minus 650 for a reason. I'll just go back to that Elijah Smith fight really quickly if I can. Elijah Smith is a minus 230 favorite. I'd say that's for a reason. I believe he's going to get this fight done by decision. Let me check the exact outcome odds. Elijah Smith by points, the up is plus 120. The shortest outcome in Sam Hughes versus Pierre Rodriguez. Sam Hughes is a plus 130 underdog. But moving onward, Luan Lacerda versus Hecher Sosa. Luan Lacerda was in a scrap with Simon Oliveira in his last fight. Luan Lacerda was going into that fight at 0-2 in the UFC, so he was fighting for his job. And Luan Lacerda came out with a big submission victory against Simon Oliveira. But Hecher Sosa, honestly, I wasn't expecting him to do very much on the Contender Series. He was fighting someone who came out of LFA. LFA is a very, very good organization, and I think the UFC matchmakers were expecting Hecher Sosa to just kind of be a lamb out there to slaughter against the last dude that he fought. However, I really do believe that Hecher Sosa, despite, the UFC matchmakers wanting him to lose in that Contender Series fight, he kind of showed us who he is. Hecher Sosa is a little bit of a junkyard dog. He's just a little bit of a dog. And, sometimes in fighting, you just got to have that dog. And Luan Lacerda, while he has that dog playing jiu-jitsu on the ground, a very, very talented ground fighter, I do believe when it's on the feet, he's entirely mismatched. And Hecher Sosa, I believe he's going to get it done by decision or potentially even a KO here against Luan Lacerda. But this is something I struggle with. Oftentimes I struggle with fighters who are coming off of Dana White's Contender Series. I'm not exactly sure how to rate these guys because they're just not as proven in the UFC. They're not as proven, the regional scene. Someone may have a great regional record. However, they're not the most talented fighter. They're not the most complete fighter. When the round gets going, when it gets tough, like Luke Fernandez, for example, last weekend. I thought he could have recovered from that punch to the face. Instead he just curled up in a ball like a little baby and wanted to get finished. And so you never really know the character of these guys until they've been tested in the UFC. And Luan Lacerda has been tested in the UFC, and he has not shown to be that great. And honestly, I'm not sure if Hecher Sosa is that great either. But I'm going to go with Hecher Sosa. Yeah, he's a minus 230 favorite here. I think the most likely outcome would be points. Yeah, Hecher Sosa plus 230 by KO, plus 280 by points. I think one of those KO / decision here for Hecher Sosa is absolutely what I would bet on. Luan Lacerda is very, very talented on the ground. I do not think Hecher Sosa can get it done there. And so, moving onward, we got Balaji Oki versus Manuel Sosa. And Manuel Sosa is an absolute killer. Balaji Oki, I was a big fan of Balaji when he was coming into the UFC. Has very, very good striking on the feet. Is a very, very good counter puncher. Looks good when he's moving forward. Looks good kind of moving backwards. However, Manuel Sosa is just a killer. He's just a killer. I want to check the odds on this fight just to make sure that I'm not tripping. But Manuel Sosa is a minus 310 for a reason. I imagine Manuel Sosa to win by KO. Yeah, plus 195. Manuel Sosa to win by points is plus 220. I think Manuel Sosa absolutely goes out there and takes it to Balaji Oki. We've seen Balaji Oki sometimes look like he wants to quit in there. I believe Manuel Sosa will get this fight done by KO. I think Manuel Sosa is a great, great, great parlay piece. He ultimately is making his debut. I have acknowledged that, sometimes I struggle with these guys coming off the Contender Series. But Manuel Sosa is my pick here for sure. And so, moving onward, Chris Curtis versus Mytel Beck Orobly. And I do not know why this fight is showing up on the prelims of this UFC fight night, because Mytel Beck Orobly is coming off of a crazy knockout against Jack Hermanson. And Chris Curtis has been in some scraps throughout his time in the UFC. But Chris Curtis is 38 years old. Mytel Beck Orobly is in the best form of his career. His only loss in the UFC coming against Mateusz Rebecki, and that was an absolute scrap. Two junkyard dogs going at it. I believe Orobly could take Chris Curtis down. I believe Orobly is going to be moving forward, and I believe the Kyrgyzstani fighter is just going to be better everywhere in the fight than Chris Curtis. I mean, we've seen Chris Curtis put on some great striking matchups, but Chris Curtis was very, very frustrated by a guy like Jack Hermanson moving around the outside. You know, Chris Curtis really is a great counterpuncher. He wants people to be moving towards him. And so he's going to be getting that against Mytel Beck Orobly. And so Chris Curtis is going to have someone who's consistently moving forward. But the way Mytel Beck Orobly cuts off the cage, his grappling, I think everything is too strong for Chris Curtis. Even though Chris Curtis has turned in great performances against Brendan Allen, turned in great performances against other fighters in the UFC, I believe it's Mytel Beck Orobly's time. Chris Curtis is 38 years old and has been looking worse and worse in his recent fights, whereas Mytel Beck Orobly has been looking better and better. And so we're going to be keeping the momentum going with Mytel Beck Orobly. Mytel Beck Orobly will probably win by decision, 30-27 on all three judges' scorecards. And so, moving onward, let me just check the odds on that fight. Yep, Mytel Beck Orobly minus 340, and Orobly to win by points is plus 145, and I really do believe that's the angle. Brad Tavares versus Eric Anders. Let's be honest. Two old-ass motherfuckers. Two old-ass guys. Brad Tavares, this is his 21st fight at middleweight in the UFC, the most middleweight bouts in the UFC. Eric Anders, also an old-ass dude. Loves to work in the clinch, has looked good at sometimes in his UFC career, but has been looking worse and worse as of recently. Both these guys have not been in their peak form. However, I believe Brad Tavares is the better fighter here. I believe he has more left to offer at this point in his career, and therefore I'm going to take Brad Tavares to win a little bit of a scrappy decision versus Eric Anders. Expect Eric Anders to be moving forward, trying to hold Brad Tavares against the cage, but I think Brad Tavares will be winning a close decision here. I think both these guys, are kind of fighting for roster spots at this point in their UFC career. I don't think the UFC wants to cut a guy like Brad Tavares, right? Has given a lot to the sport, has given a lot to the organization. However, they will if they have to, and these guys have not been in good form as of late. And so I'm going to take Brad Tavares. This is a pick'em fight, minus 110 on FanDuel. Earlier in the week, I believe Brad Tavares was a slight underdog, but I'm leaning Brad Tavares here. Probably Brad Tavares to get it done by decision. And so moving onward, the fight that I'm looking forward to most on the card. I am looking forward to the Vallejos Emmett fight. I think it'll be a really, really fun scrap to watch. But my guy, Steven Aspwood, who put on an absolute beatdown on Sean Sharaf in his last fight. Steven Aspwood landing a record for heavyweight significant strikes. 170 significant strikes in the first, he ended up finishing Sean Sharaf in the second round. So in the first 10 minutes of the fight, he had over 170 significant strikes. That is incredibly impressive from a heavyweight. But we've seen Vitor Petrino, kind of throw his neck in there against Anthony Smith at light heavyweight. He hasn't made the highest IQ plays, but we see him coming off of a big KO win. And Vitor Petrino, look at him. He's a muscle hamster. This is the battle of the battle of the bodies. Steven Aspwood, a little saggy boy. Vitor Petrino, absolutely jacked. And to me, this fight is also pretty clear, right? If Vitor Petrino can get it to the ground, if he can get Steven Aspwood to the ground early, he's probably going to finish Steven Aspwood. If Steven Aspwood can manage to stay on his feet, make this a little bit of a longer fight, Steven Aspwood is going to walk forward and box the living hell out of Vitor Petrino's face. We've seen Steven Aspwood with that high output at heavyweight Very, very, very few guys, if anyone, could even match that output at heavyweight. And I really do believe if Steven Aspwood can kind of get this working downhill, if he can move forward in Vitor Pacino's face, kind of stay in his face, put him in boxing range, put Vitor on the back feet, dig underhooks, potentially even sprawl once, something that we never see at heavyweight, someone sprawling, right? If Steven Aspwood can do those things, he's going to beat Vitor Pacino. And I just want to check the odds on this fight to make sure that I am predicting and Steven Aspwood is a plus 200 underdog, and Vitor Pacino is a minus 240 favorite. And what that really is if Vitor Pacino gets him to the ground, he wins the fight. But give me Steven Aspwood, the saggy boy, to keep the hot streak rolling. I know he has not quite fought the level of competition Vitor has, but at a certain point, some of these guys got to break through. We need some new blood in the heavyweight division. If Vitor Pacino wins this fight, let's start propelling him forward. If Steven Aspwood wins this fight, let's start moving him towards the top of the division. I really do believe Steven Aspwood, if he can keep it on the field, will box Vitor Pacino's head off. And so give me Steven Aspwood by maybe a round 3 KO or a 29-28, 30-27 decision. And so, moving onward to the main card, Charles Inner G Johnson versus Bruno the Bulldog Silva, a ranked matchup here in the flyweight division. And Charles Johnson is coming off of that nasty KO loss to Alex Perez. And Alex Perez has been in, half-decent form. We know Charles Johnson starts the first round really slow, and that's where Alex Perez was able to take advantage of Charles Johnson. Will Bruno Silva be able to do the same? I do not believe so. I believe Charles the Inner G Johnson may even lose round 1 against Bruno Silva, but will pull away the cardio of Charles Inner G Johnson, the uppercuts of Charles Johnson, the power later in the fight. It withstands, or he's able to maintain that power from round 1 to round 3. And so I think Charles Johnson is going to win, a potentially a unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Or he's going to get a round 3 knockout of Bruno the Bulldog Silva. We've seen Charles Johnson against very high-level fighters. It seems like Charles Johnson KOing you is the path to be in the top half of the flyweight division, right? He KO'd Loner Kavanaugh. He was able to KO Joshua Van. And I really do believe Charles Johnson excels against some of these shorter fighters who don't have, the ability to put him away early. And so Bruno Silva is just that. So Bruno the Bulldog Silva is going down against Charles the Inner G Johnson. Let me check the odds on this fight. Charles Johnson is a minus 170 favorite. I think that's a pretty accurate betting line. And so give me Charles Johnson to pull out the win here. Moving on, Marwan Rahiki versus Harry Hardwick. We all remember Harry Hardwick stepping into the UFC on short notice, a weight class up, getting the brakes leg kicked off of him. Harry Hardwick got leg kicked until he could not handle it no more and had to quit. Marwan Rahiki is coming off of a huge win on Dana White's Contender Series. I believe it was that nasty KO over, I'm drawing a blank, and I'm going to check it out because I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys very accurate information here. But Rahiki has looked incredible in his fights as of recent. And of course, this fight is not even on the ESPN app, and I'm not bothering to pull up Tapology at this moment. I believe I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. I believe Harry Hardwick is able to last in there for a round or two, but I believe the striking of Marwan Rahiki is going to be way too much for England's Harry Hardwick. I believe Harry Hardwick is a fine fighter. He's a little bit of a scrapper. He's an all-around type of guy. He doesn't particularly excel anywhere in the fight, but Marwan Rahiki excels on the feet, will be able to put away Harry Hardwick. And so give me Marwan Rahiki by round 3 KO, round 2 KO, or potentially a decision. And so moving on, Andre Touchy-Feely versus Jose Miguel Delgado. And I love my boy Andre Touchy-Feely. He's a great, great fighter. He's been in scraps with my guy Bill Algeo and others in the UFC. But Jose Miguel Delgado, let's be honest, he's coming off of a loss here. He's going to bring some of that anger into the octagon. Jose Miguel Delgado is a very, 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 very talented fighter. His last loss coming to Nathaniel Wood in an absolute scrap. We've seen him KO guys like Hyder Emil, KO that person on the Contender Series who I'm drawing a blank of, and even one more fighter in the UFC. So, he's 2-1 in the UFC. If you count the Contender Series, 3-1. Nathaniel Wood, the prospect Nathaniel Wood, is an incredible fighter. Potentially someone, in my opinion, who could challenge for a title one day. Right, Nathaniel Wood has had some ups and downs in the UFC, but he's able to beat Jose Miguel Delgado. And I think the fact that Jose Miguel Delgado was able to stand in there and really compete with Nathaniel Wood speaks volumes of who Jose Miguel Delgado is. Andre Fili is getting older and older in this sport, and I believe Jose Miguel Delgado gets this fight done by finish. I believe he's going to KO Andre Touchy Fili, and so give me Jose Miguel Delgado. And so, moving onward, Ion Cutelaba versus Umar Sy, and let's be honest about Ion Cutelaba. Ion Cutelaba against guys who are very, very low level. He's able to beat against guys who are a little bit higher level. He gets freaking waxed. And we've seen Umar Sy on the takedowns. I know we watched Umar Sy lose to Alonzo Menafield, but it looked like he was just a little bit scared, a little bit intimidated in the moment in that time, right? But I think Umar Sy has improved drastically since that fight. I believe his takedowns will be too much for Ion Cutelaba. I believe he is too much of a well-rounded fighter to lose to a guy like Cutelaba. And I'm just checking the odds on this fight just to make sure. Umar Sy minus 245. I believe that's a great parlay piece. I believe Umar Sy to win by submission is even better value. No, plus 220. Maybe it's not a value play. But Umar Sy, I believe the submission there is going to be very, very live against Ion Cutelaba. We've seen Cutelaba finish before, and he doesn't really beat these guys who are the highest of levels. And so, give me Umar Sy to win this fight by submission. Moving onward, Amanda Lemos versus Jillian Robertson, and this is one I've had a lot of trouble deciding. Right, I want to check the odds on this fight just to see who the favorite is. Just give myself a little bit of direction here when picking this one. Oh my God, Jillian Robertson is a minus 205 favorite. If Amanda Lemos keeps this fight standing, let's be honest, Jillian Robertson is going to get absolutely flatlined. If Jillian Robertson gets this fight to the ground, it's going to be wraps for Amanda Lemos. All Jillian Robertson has to do is get this fight to the ground once. She's going to absolutely wrap Amanda Lemos up like a blunt and submit her or control her for the entire round, right? And if she doesn't get the submission, Amanda Lemos, we've seen Amanda Lemos start to get tired. So if Jillian Robertson is able to get Amanda Lemos down early, this fight is going to be wraps. Give me Jillian Robertson to win this fight, potentially by decision or submission. However, I am a little bit nervous here. I do think Amanda Lemos at like plus 170 is great, great value because Amanda Lemos could absolutely KO Jillian Robertson on the feet. If she's able to keep it standing, she's going to look like, Jillian Robertson will look like a fish out of water on the feet. But again, Jillian Robertson has such elite takedowns that I do believe she'll be able to pull out this win in the women's strawweight division. So give me Jillian Robertson to get it done. Then lastly, the main event of the evening. The Argentinian Ilia Topuria, Kevin Vallejos, whose only loss in his career came against Gene Silva on the Contender Series. And let's be real here. Kevin Vallejos made that fight an absolute scrap, and we know how good Gene Silva has been in the featherweight division. Josh Emmett, we've seen him, have great performances. I still remember that big upset over Calvin Kattar. I had my money on Josh Emmett. That was a huge, huge win. But Calvin Kattar is not that great, and it was a split decision win. We've seen Josh Emmett since get absolutely dog-walked by Yusuf Zalal. That was an incredible armbar submission by Zalal. We've seen Josh Emmett get pieced up by Ilia Topuria. We all remember that fight. Absolute domination for 5 rounds by Ilia Topuria. And I do believe, we've seen Josh Emmett is a hard guy to KO. But Kevin Vallejos, I want to check the age discrepancy here, right? You guys remember last week, right? Raul Rosas Jr. versus Rob Font. Raul Rosas was 21 years old. Rob Font was 38. If there's ever a 17-year age gap, give me the younger fighter. And we got a 17-year age gap again. The 41-year-old, the ancient man, Josh Emmett. fighting Kevin Vallejos, the 24-year-old, an absolute stud who's just looked incredible in his recent performances. I expect nothing less from Kevin Vallejos than to absolutely dismantle Josh Emmett, potentially over 5 rounds. If Josh Emmett doesn't want to get finished, Josh Emmett doesn't want to get finished. But we've seen Kevin Vallejos put away Giga Chikadze, who's a great fighter. We've seen him put away Danny Silva, Soo Young Choi. And so give me Kevin Vallejos to get the job done. Potentially, I want to check the odds on the exact outcome in this fight because I really do want to know where the value is, what the angle would be for the main event if we want to pick an exact outcome. Vallejos by KO is plus 110. Yeah, I believe that's probably the outcome that we see. Josh Emmett has had this accumulation of damage. We've seen him get finished by Yusuf Zalal. I know that was on the ground, but I think Kevin Vallejos is even better than Yusuf Zalal. And so, give me Kevin Vallejos over Josh Emmett, and let's just speed run through these picks just so you guys know. We got Vallejos over Josh Emmett. We got Jillian Robertson over Amanda Lemos. We got Umar Sy over Ion Cutelaba. We got Jose Miguel Delgado over Andre Fili. We got Marwan Rahiki versus Harry Hardwick. Give me Charles Energy Johnson versus Bruno the Bulldog Silva. We're going with the upset, Steven Asplit over Vitor Petrino. Give me Brad Tavares versus Eric Anders. I want Mytel Black Oralbly versus Chris Curtis. Manuel Sosa over Balaji Oki. Give me Hetcher Sosa versus Luan Lacerda. Bia Mesquita absolutely dominating Montserrat Rendon. Elijah Smith defeating Su Young Yu. And Sam Hughes upsetting Pierre Rodriguez. So we're only going with 2 underdogs on this fight. And then, as we always do, let's cook up the cycle parlay. And I think I know who I want to go with by submission. I think if this guy gets this fight on the ground over and over again, Umar Sy by submission at plus 220 is an absolute incredible first leg. Moving onward. Ooh, this KO is going to be difficult to pick. If we want to go with the value here, if we want to go with, man, this is a hard one. I'm not going to go with the value. I'm going to go Jose Miguel Delgado at plus 110 by KO. And then what's that last leg, the decision leg? Oftentimes the hardest one to get. Man. Give me Mytel Black Oralbly by points. Let's see. $10,000 wins you $155,000. For me personally, something like 50 wins you 773. That is a shorter UFC. I know it's a shorter cycle parlay with a plus 220, a plus 110, and a plus 145. And so that's our kind of shorter cycle parlay. We'll do that. 50 to win 773. And let me give you 3 different legs for a different cycle parlay that potentially has some long shots in it. And so, we're going for some long shots. Give me Charles Johnson by KO. I believe Charles Johnson by KO at plus 420. Charles Johnson could absolutely KO Bruno the Bulldog Silva later on in this fight. It would be something like round 3, in my opinion. Let me see what these... Man, this is tough. This is a tough card for cycle parlays. Give me Brad Tavares by decision at plus 200. It's a great leg right there. And then the long shot of the night. Give me Sam Hughes by submission at plus 1,300. That one, $500 wins you over $100,000. Sam Hughes by submission at plus 1,300. Brad Tavares by points at plus 200. And Charles Johnson by KO, $500 wins you $108,000. Book it. Those are the 2 cycle parlays for the week. If we want to go through kind of the best bets, I like Sam Hughes as an underdog here. I think Elijah Smith is a great parlay piece. And if you want to tap into all of our bets, hit me up, DM me on Instagram. I'll get you I'll tell you personally what I'm betting on, what the parlays are. I'm not just going to be giving out my best bets here on the YouTube channel anymore. I'll give you guys the cycle parlays, and I'll give you guys all the predictions. But if you want to know personally what I'm betting on, hit me up on Instagram, MMA Outlaw TV. Shoot me a DM. I'll absolutely let you know. And those are the picks for UFC Fight Night. Josh Emmett versus Kevin Vallejos. This one is sure to be a scrap. Let me know in the comments section who you guys think is gonna win, what your guys' best bets are. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode of all of our prediction of all of our best bets. I'll see you guys next week. I'm sorry for getting to this on Friday, but I hope you guys enjoy, and like and subscribe if you're appreciating the content. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.